You're right, Chair.
Good evening. Thank you very much and welcome members to this Central Area Planning Committee meeting of Maldon District Council on Wednesday the 19th of April 2023. I am Councillor Carly Mays and I'm the chairman of this committee. This meeting will be streamed live and recorded, and by being present in the meeting you are giving consent to being recorded. Members and officers, during each item please indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you to at the appropriate time. I encourage all members to keep contributions clear and concise. When invited to speak, please remain seated and speak clearly, remembering to turn on your microphone and then turning it off when you've finished. When speaking and referring to agenda papers, please ensure you reference a page or paragraph number. Tonight we have officers Lisa Greenwood, who is remote, and Mr. Michael Johnson, Lead Specialist Development Management Service Delivery. And our clerk is Sean. Good evening, officers. Item 2, apologies for absence. Sean, can you tell me who we've had apologies from, please?
Good evening, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillors Edwards, Hubner, Nunn and Stills. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We move to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, and it is recommended that these minutes of the Central Area Planning Committee held on the 25th of January 2023 are approved as a true and accurate record. They are presented for accuracy only. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Are there any matters of any accuracy that need to be recorded? Lovely. Can these be agreed by assent, please?
Agreed.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded that they are required to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are also reminded that they are all required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware of it, should the need arise through the meeting. I firstly would like to declare a non-registrable interest in that I know the objectors and I know the applicant. Thank you. Do I have any other declarations? Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I also know some of the people seated in the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also acquainted with one of the objectors.
Thank you. Councillor Beale.
Yes, Chair, I know some of the objectors.
Thank you. Councillor Spenceley.
I'm acquainted with both the applicant and the objectors.
Thank you. Any others? Lovely, thank you very much. Did you get all of those, Sean?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I did, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. We now move to item 5, application 22/01241/full Josua 4 Silver Street, Maldon, on pages 11 to 23 in your packs. The proposal is a change of use from Class C3 dwelling house to sui generis short-term holiday let. The applicant is Mr. N. Bresler. The agent is Mr. Simon Platter. This application has come before us as it's been called in by Councillor Swain for reasons relating to Policy D3, protection of a heritage asset, and Policy E5, specifically issues of on-site parking provision, lack of amenity space, and impact on neighbouring properties. Members have all had a copy of the presentation that was circulated yesterday, Monday the 17th of April. No, it wasn't, it was the day before. Sorry about that. Miss Greenwood is going to present the application. Miss Greenwood.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is located on the eastern side of Silver Street, which is accessed north from the High Street. The site is within the town centre and the Maldon Conservation Area. Number 4 Silver Street is a Grade 2 listed building and is neighboured by a number of heritage assets, including the Bell, the White Horse and Shez House at the rear. The dwelling was first listed in 1971. Research has shown that parts of the dwelling date back to 1400, however the building has been altered over the years and now has some 20th century additions, including a 2-storey range to the rear. Planning permission and listed building consent were also recently granted for the restoration and alterations to the exterior and interior of the existing house. These applications were granted for consent by the planning committee and these works are underway. Planning permission is now sought for the change of use from a residential dwelling to a short-term holiday let. There are no internal or external alterations sought. With regard to the principle of development, as stated, the site is within the town centre. The local plan is clear that the central area will continue to act as a focal point within the district for retail, commercial, industrial, community and tourism activities. Policy E5 of the plan states that the council will support developments which contribute positively to the growth of local tourism in a sustainable manner. The application has been supported by a design and access statement which provides information with regards to the site's town centre location and good connections to tourist destinations and the green infrastructure network and sustainable modes of transport. With regard to the need for such a use, a report has also been submitted by Newland Lettings. This shows that there are less than 100 rental properties listed in the district in comparison to neighbouring authorities such as Tendring, which has almost 500, and Braintree, which has 250. Comments have also been received from the strategy team, who acknowledge that more high-quality visitor and holiday accommodation is needed in the district, and that the use of this building should be specifically for holiday or short-term lets to ensure it supports the visitor offer and economy. Consideration must be given to the conservation of the heritage asset, and this application has been viewed by the council's conservation officer, who raises no objection. Whilst it is noted that objections have been received with regard to parking, as the proposal provides 3 tandem car parking spaces and will require some degree of loading and unloading during arrival and departure times. The proposal has been reviewed by the Highway Authority, who raised no objection. It should also be noted that the site is within a controlled parking area and parking at Silver Street is restricted, and the parking arrangement has previously been accepted at the site as a residential dwelling, although however this is for a holiday let. Concern has also been raised with regard to the level of noise experienced at the site as a result of the change of use. The proposal has been reviewed by the council's environmental health officer, who notes that the proposed use could have the potential for noise disturbance. As such, should planning permission be forthcoming, a condition is recommended to be imposed with regard to the management of noise generating activities. The applicant would be required to produce a noise management plan to ensure that reasonable measures are put into place to reduce the impact of noise. In addition, conditions are to be imposed to ensure the property remains as a short-term holiday let, managing the duration of occupancy of single or groups of persons, and for a log to be maintained of all visitors staying at the site. Comments have also been received as to whether the building can sustain 10 people. Just pop back to the floor plans. It should be noted that the proposal seeks to provide for 5 double bedrooms across the ground and first floor with associated communal areas. Whilst the patterns of comings and goings may differ to a single household, this is not uncommon for a site situated within a town centre location, particularly whereby neighbouring uses include a guest house and a hotel. The private amenity space provided also remains unaltered. To conclude, the proposal does not include any internal or external alterations. Whilst it is acknowledged that a number of objections have been received, no technical objections have been received. The site is located within the town centre, and there are no planning objections to the principle of the proposed use, subject to the imposition of suitably worded conditions to ensure the use remains as a short-term let, and that further information is obtained with regard to noise and waste management before the commencement of such change. The proposal has been found to satisfy policies S1, S5 and E5 of the local development plan and will represent a sustainable form of development. It is therefore recommended that planning permission is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Greenwood. I would just like to point out that this application relates to a Grade 2 star listed building. I have had that just checked by Mr Johnson, so I'd like members to actually note that it is a Grade 2 star listed property, not a Grade 2. Thank you. Councillor Swain.
Yes, can we have a bit more light?
Yes, could we? Are there lights there? Yeah, press them. Oh, and then there was light. Fabulous, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have one public participant for this application, an objector, Mrs Suzanne Wood. Sean, could you put the clock up for me, please? Mrs Wood, could you come forward? Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. That's okay. That's it. Lovely, thank you. Can you turn the microphone on for me? Thanks, Kevin. Mrs Wood, in line with the public participation scheme, I now invite you to read your submission. Please take a seat and turn the microphone on. It's all right, I've already done that. Thank you very much. I have to remind you that you're allocated 2 minutes for public speaking, and your 2 minutes start when you first start to speak.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of many local residents to object to the current proposal based on the negative impact to the neighbourhood in a mainly residential street in the heart of the conservation area. Prior to any planning permission, this site was advertised as a venue for large parties with dining for 16 people and a disco facility in the cellar for over 30 people. No official disclosure of this was made in 2021 application, even though the applicant stated in the first Town Council planning meeting his intentions. This fact was deemed ultra-virus to that application, but is raised here because we have a clear demonstration of the scale of the intended use. Despite supporting the last application without visiting the site, English Heritage refuses to comment on this one. Environmental Health raises concerns about this detrimental impact, suggesting a noise management plan of restrictions on group type before development. But this is not possible due to the mockery the applicant has made of the planning process. We are 2 years down the line with a property already overdeveloped beyond its current remit as a residential dwelling. Now, with 5 double bedrooms with ensuite, we could expect parties of 10 adults arriving in 5 cars in a residential dwelling suitable for up to 6 people. There are already guest options in Silver Street with supervised accommodation. The government and many local councils are clamping down on these short-term lets due to the negative impact suffered by local residents. Overcapacity leads us to highlight only 2 parking spaces according to the 2021 application. This is completely inadequate to cope with this level of occupancy and will cause significant disturbance locally. Therefore, we request this building remain a dwelling for up to 6 people.
Thank you. Do you want to take your seat? Thank you very much, Mr Wood. Before we move and I open the debate, I think I would like to say that I was very disappointed that there was no comment from Heritage England, and they very much took a back seat and decided not to become embroiled or whatever. I think that was unhelpful given the importance of this building. Members, I now open the debate and invite you to put any questions or make any comments you have on the report. I think I'd like to go to Councillor Swain first, as he called it in, even though it's my ward. Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, this is an unusual property, and I mean it's developed from a residential commercial thing into a rather large residential property, and perhaps if the Town and Country Planning Act had been in exist, we'd be looking at a COUPA from commercial change at the back. But as it is, changing the whole thing to letting, and apparently short-term letting, creates a totally different proposition. And a number of the things that, a number of the points that officers have made in supporting the application seem to me a little bit wider than mark, given this change of use proposal. They seem to relate to a 4 to 5 bed property in single residence, and there are a whole number of areas. The parking, as a single use, amenity space, the amount of waste likely to be generated, the egress into Silver Street, the impact on the locality and neighbours, and the lack of 4 to 5 beds for rent, which has been mentioned by the one of the agents. Now, this may already all apply if it was looked at as a single residence, and I think looked at as a short-term holiday let with 5 bedrooms, all those considerations really go out of the window, because the parking would inevitably involve more vehicles, which would reduce the amenity space below what it should be. There would be more waste generated than otherwise. There would be a lot of vehicle movement to manoeuvring out into Silver Street if somebody wanted to get out from the far end of the parking lot, and the nature of the use would impact on the locality. The officers have put in conditions about logging the occupancy and a noise management plan, and I find it difficult to see how they will actually operate and be enforceable or be enforced. And I think that's almost impracticable, some of these control or conditions that are being mentioned. Lastly, on the accommodation front, from a tourism point of view, well, I don't think we're talking about tourists. We're talking about parties coming in to Maldon, not as tourists, but as parties in Maldon, not to tour. And as far as parking concerned, I think it's unrealistic to suppose that anybody's going to go up and park in White Horse Lane when they are accommodated in Silver Street. And we have to bear in mind there is a travel lodge just down the bottom of the hill. So all told, I think a lot of the boxes that the officers have ticked don't really stand up, if that's a bad metaphor. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd.
Thank you, Chairman. I take a different view to Councillor Swain, and it has been highlighted by the officer, actually. This application is not talking about any internal or external alterations. It's merely change of use, and that's really what we need to decide upon, whether the change of use is acceptable or not. There's no technical reason to refuse this, in my view. I think this will extend the offer for tourism. I hold great store in what is said by the conservation officer, and he has no objections. Indeed, I know that he's been working alongside the applicant in relation to this. Could I just ask the officer, it does say in the report 3 parking spaces are available, but we've heard that there are only 2. Could we just confirm that, Mr. Johnson, through you, Chair?
Yes, of course. Ms Greenwood.
Hello. As part of the list of building consent and the householder application, which is the works that are going on at the moment, the plans showed 2 parking spaces, and in the officer's report, it was mentioned that for a dwelling of this size, if we're looking at it as a dwelling, which we were at that stage, normally we would look at 3 parking spaces. However, because of the town centre location and the existing use, the 2 spaces were accepted. The plans for the change of use show 3 parking spaces because they show 2 at the back and 1 under the carport. Now, if you look at our parking standards, I think it was decided that obviously we've taken a position that 2 would be acceptable, and this is being assessed as a holiday let as opposed to a residential dwelling, and owing to the site's town centre location, that we would accept 2.
Yeah, Miss Greenwood, can you just clarify whether the car parking spaces would meet any of our criteria or only the MPPF criteria?
In terms of the Maldon standards, I believe they may be slightly short, but marginally on length.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd, did you want to come back?
Yes. So my point is that because this is a central location, it is possible that this may be a drop-off point. For example, we don't know, but they might say just parking to drop off and then park. If anyone who's had city breaks or even somewhere in a town, you can't always park right outside the venue. I think it's good that there is a noise generation condition, but I think when I'm looking at the reason that we're here tonight, looking at the change of use, I would be inclined to support the officer's recommendation. I understand that there have been objections, but I can't see a technical reason why we should say no.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Any other comments? Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Chair. Unusually, I agree with Councillor Hurd. Unfortunately, Silver Street, obviously being born in the town, I've known it all my life, and it's a beautiful street. When the Bell House was renovated by the Fries years ago, it's a marvellous asset, and it's complicated. But as Councillor Hurd says, you're only here to look at what's in front of you based on the technical information provided by professional officers, and it looks like it's policy compliant. And there's no technical objections, so we could be deemed as being unreasonable if we just voted it out on emotion. Councillor Swain has raised some points, but those points are very subjective because you don't know, and not everybody goes along to have a rave up and a party. I myself go to many different areas with family and are highly respectful. And especially in a building with, this is not a substandard building when it's finished. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a premium offering for the market and tourism. Well, if you go to a town, you're a tourist. So, you know, one of the objectives in the LDP is to promote tourism, and an offering like this, emotionally, I'm going to admit, very, very, very split. But from a perspective of what we're here to ascertain, again, like Councillor Hurd, and slightly regrettably, I'd have to go and support the recommendation of the officers.
Thank you. Councillor Spenceley.
So trying to look at this very logically with what's before us here, one of the things that does concern me is that a noise management plan is something that's recommended as a condition, but that we don't have sight of it now. And being that this is a change of use application, I would really have liked to have seen that as part of this, because my concern is when that's put in place, that as members we won't get to look at what that involves. So that's a concern, because if we're going to take the responsibility of passing this, I would like that to be part of the application. I can see Mr. Johnson's already getting ready to respond.
I was just going to come
but so I will just listen to the response. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I mean, this sort of use isn't one that would automatically be considered as a significant noise generating operation. It's a use in a residential dwelling. It's the existing dwelling. It's not been extended. The occupancy is not one that could not be unreasonable for a very large family, and obviously it'd be a very large family, yeah. It's, while there are a couple of parking spaces, there are no opportunities for on-street parking spaces. There are significant parking restrictions in the area. So even if you thought about a number of individuals occupying these rooms, you know, there wouldn't be car parking spaces to accommodate them. They couldn't park on the street. Other than loading and unloading, they would have to find parking elsewhere. The town centre is one which attracts tourists who wouldn't principally be looking to drive, or if they are looking to drive, they'd be parking in a public parking space. I mean, specifically within the report, I'll just find the relevant section.
5.4. 6 parts in car.
Yes, a bit about the parking. Maybe Lisa can find it quicker than I can. 5.4.6. We just wanted to draw out where parking issues have been considered on appeal at 119 High Street, Maldon, but there have been some other appeals where inspectors have taken a general line about particular developments within the town centre and car parking. I mean, just for the benefit of others in the space here, the inspector talks about 2 nearby public car parks. And in this one, the council has not refuted the fact that residents could have overnight parking permits, annual parking permits for these car parks. There's been no technical highway objection, as is also in the case here. So for all those reasons, there would be no unacceptable impact on highway safety, and the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would not be severe. And also in this case, there's been no technical objections, no highway safety issues have been raised. So in terms of that, in terms of the sort of like the noise mitigation, there is one that policy, those material considerations around that. There's no, I mean, I do appreciate the concerns raised with the objector on the previous use. I'm well aware of that. I was involved in that application. Any such use in that building would have been completely unacceptable, but that's not what was approved at that time. Yeah. No. The people may have intentions, but it means nothing unless it's something that's material to what's in front of us. There is nothing in that sense material to us. We can't base our decisions on what we think might happen. We can only base it on what's in front of us. And what's in front of us is a tourist-related activity, similar to others in the area. In need, demand has been raised, as is set out in the report by the specialists who are looking into these particular matters. The noise and activity mitigation is something that I thought about as being useful to have, just so that there's a measure of control. It's not something we would normally seek up front. It's not, for example, a validation matter for these sorts of applications, but it's one in which there will be a commitment from the applicant. These matters would be enforceable. For example, if there was untoward activity that was contrary to what's in the plan, the residents can complain. It's something we can pick up from enforcement. I suppose similar also to the waste, in terms of how waste would be managed. There's a condition on the waste management plan. That, again, is not something we would normally seek up front for a development of this type. But I thought it would be useful so that there can be management and they can adhere to that. And these are enforceable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Did you want to come back? I'm still concerned regarding the noise and activity management plan and the fact that I'll come to you in just a moment, Councillor Beale, and the fact that we don't have sight of that, particularly given that this site is a very sensitive site and it is a sensitive building. There is a lot of, as you can see, concern as to its future use. And I think that management plan would have been useful in helping us to decide what we were going to do going forward. What sort of thing would be included in that sort of management, noise and activity management plan? That would allay members' fears that it wouldn't become an unruly house of activity.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, the first thing I'd have to say, we can't take a position that this use will be unruly. I mean, that sounds particularly prejudicial to to the type of occupiers being tourists. I mean, Councillor Lagham made a reference to even himself as a tourist. Yeah. And I think that's something that most of us have done in our lives in visiting other places. We don't go there with an intention of being unruly. This is not a building which has a dedicated space. And I think it was also mentioned by the officer, there is no restaurant type facilities to be taking place within this building. It's purely for bed sitting. There is reception rooms where they can watch TV. These are not party spaces. But I suppose any noise management plan would just confirm, and it's not a requirement, it's not something that, for example, we could refuse an application outright if that's not submitted. Any such decision on that basis would be completely unreasonable and probably cost awarded for unreasonable behaviour. So this is merely a belt and braces. It's something that we would normally consider with our environmental health officers. They would consider it from a technical point of view as much as one can do for that type of management. But I mean, management and being respectful and reasonable in occupancy of any sort of accommodation like this is something that's part and parcel of these operations in most places. There are the sort of terms and conditions when you go to these places to rent a space. You can't behave how you want to. Yep. There are rules and regulations. The management plan is purely to just sort of capture that and to ensure that. Similarly also for us to ensure the type of occupancy. And again, we need to be careful about who we think these groups of people might be. But it's again just to make sure that if there were any intentions otherwise, that the premises may be used for occupancy other than short-term lets for tourism purposes. The address and the details of any occupiers must be given. A register must be kept and must be available for us to inspect at any time as we see fit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Beale.
How long have I got?
How long you would like.
Good. I've got a big list here.
Excellent.
Not happy about this at all. This is another special where this guy makes out he's actually giving you what you want, but he's not. I mean, can you imagine going there right, let's start in the list. Currently in use as a dwelling. No, it's not. It's a building site. Is it managed? The noise management, I know they've got that, but this isn't a short-term let. This is a hotel. We've got more than enough spaces with the Premier Inn. I think it is down the Causeway. You've got the Blue Boar. There's another one down Want Road. But it's not a short-term let. And how long is a short-term let? Is it going to be a family? Is it going to be 5 different couples?
No, Councillor Beale, if I could draw your attention to the conditions, holiday accommodation, not more than 28 days, and no reoccupation within 3 months by the same person. So it is short term. 28 days is deemed to be short term.
No one's going to come for 28 days, are they? Can you imagine? I mean, you've got Highways saying they've got no objection. They're saying they've got 3 car parking spaces. I don't know many hotels that have cars parked one behind the other. And the residents have got a valid point. If you've got someone at the back of them 3 cars who wants to get out, you've then got to get hold of the other 2 people to get them to move their car for you to get out. It's not a practical solution. And why haven't the highways kicked up? There's double yellow lines, both sides of that road. It tells you how narrow the road is. Where are we? Is the cellar still going to be used for music and socialising?
I can clarify that point, and I think the officer can also clarify that. No, the cellar has been blocked up and is not accessible at all.
And it says there's not going to be any increase in refuge or recycling.
Unknown.
Well, there might not be skips there, but there's going to be bins. It's not lived in at the minute. This is basically retrospective. The amount of work they're doing on that building, what are they building? Are they building it as a family home? Have they started building it as a family home internally? Are they building it as a holiday let? It's retrospective. They've gone ahead with all this work before they even put the application in.
Okay, I'd like Mr Johnson to come back on that. Thank you, Mr Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. This is a Grade 2 star listed building. It's not a building you can go in and just hack up and turn around within a few weeks. There is careful restoration which needs to be adhered to, otherwise it would be a criminal offence to hack up the building. We can't make suppositions unless we have a valid basis on which to say that. And unless there is valid basis, that's something that can be taken up through other mediums, particularly if it's a listed building. That's a straight prosecutable matter. The plans of clearly what's in the building is within the application. It would be unreasonable for us to be making assumptions about the layout or what works have been done to the building without making reference to the plans. And the plans have been shown. Mrs. Greenwood has the plans on the screen. They're available for the public to see on the website. So clearly what the building is, and these are restoration works, not for the applicant to do what they want, and that's quite clear. So I would just exercise caution in terms of how we may think that the building would be without clearly knowing what the building is and what's proposed.
So it's not going to be specifically 5 couples. It could be a couple with 2, 4 children, whatever. So
Yes.
they take 3 bedrooms.
That's not for us to control. You have double bedrooms.
I'm trying to justify the way they're asking people to park and the inconvenience. And then if there isn't space, if say, for example, you've got 5 couples, that's potentially 5 cars. What do you expect the other people to do? Go and park in will you keep on about the town centre car parks? How much is it a day?
That's
On
actually
top of the-
something that they
on top
have to
of the let.
consider in the let. That is not something that we can actually control.
No, but what I'm saying is they're saying there's only 2 to 3 car parking spaces, but if there are 5 families in there, where are they going to park? You know, it's just, as I said, he's making out that he's giving you everything that you want. They're saying there's no objections to this, that and that. It's agreeing with this policy and that policy, but it's not.
What other questions do you have?
Have I got any more? I mentioned highways. Is there going to be any management on site? It's
No,
basically being run as a hotel.
It's a short-term let without management, on-site management.
There will be.
No, it will be off-site management.
There is.
Yeah, there has to be to put in bookings. That's how Airbnb works.
Yeah.
Other short-term lets are available. Miss Greenwood.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a point with regards to the works that are going on. These are works that were agreed at the Planning Committee and by the Planning Committee. And I know Tim House and the Conservation Officer is working really, really closely with the developer to make sure that these works are in accordance with the plans. And as Michael said, I appreciate it. It may look as if they're ongoing, but that's because they have to be of a certain quality for the building. But the works that are going on are in accordance with the plans.
Thank you, Miss Greenwood. Councillor, actually, can I go to Councillor Shaughnessy again, and then I'll go to Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You mentioned a little while ago yourself about the blocking off of the cellars.
Yes.
Now, I remember on the first application here about the metal doorways, etc., for blocking off the cellars, and I'm pretty sure that we didn't allow that because cellars need to breathe. Can Mr. Johnson or Ms. Greenwood please reassure me that metal is not going anywhere near the cellars, that it will be, for instance, wood or whatever to block the cellars off?
Do you know how they've been
Thank you.
Miss Greenwood, do you know how the cellars have been sealed?
I don't, unfortunately.
Could we find that out, please, Chair?
Can I just say that, I mean, that's not part of this application.
However, all I will say is, although it may not be part of this application, it is directly relevant because it accesses a space that we did not give planning permission for.
You wouldn't be able to access that space without, this application just applies to the ground and the first floor. It doesn't apply to the cellar. So the cellar isn't part of this, so you wouldn't have people being able to come in and go into the cellar separately because they wouldn't have access to that cellar.
You can gain
any arrangement, but also that there are no changes proposed internally or externally. So what has been agreed at the planning committee and what's been agreed with Tim House and the conservation officer is what remains. We're not making any changes whatsoever to that building that haven't already
I seem
been
to remember
approved.
that there was something about blocking up the cellars. I read somewhere that there was. Mr. Johnson.
No, I just wanted to confirm that the application concerns the ground and the first floor. It does not relate to the cellar. There is no proposals for the cellar to pursue a line of consideration about the impact of or assumed impact of use of the cellar related to this application would be quite dangerous. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. My only comment is the cellar does make up part of the building and is accessible from the centre of the building. So there is a concern, and I can understand that concern, especially as we don't have an assurance that there is no access to it. I'd like to come back to Councillor.
Thank you so much. My question was purely because of looking after this building in the correct way. You know, it is, as we've been told, a grade 2 star listed building, and you know, if things I get what people say, that the application this evening is what it is, but you know, we do have to take care of this building, and particularly if it's going to be used for these short-term lets, if that's what's going to happen this evening, and the care of the cellars is very much in my mind as care for this building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just want to come back on the what Mr. Johnson said about the noise and activity management plan, and what we're looking at with short-term lets, which is more likely to be weekly than any, any problems that arise will not be enforceable because the people would have been gone before anybody even gets around to looking at the issue. It would all be retrospective. So from that point of view, is there a question that this can be subject to licensing in some way, so that the short-term letting provision could be suspended?
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, in my experience, there are licensing implications. This is outside of the planning regime, but this is not, again, something for our consideration. That would how that may apply to this business has to be pursued separately, but it can't form part of our decision making.
Okay, Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Chair. So how are these people eating? Are the 5 couples or whatever occupants in there? Is there a communal kitchen, or does the company supply, I don't know, bed and breakfast or whatever? Is there going to be a bar in
Ms.
there?
Greenwood, could you provide the plan, please? Can you make that just a little bit bigger so we can see the dining area, because there is a dining area from recollection.
I'm not sure I can make it bigger, unfortunately, but there is a large dining area. If you can just see my cursor just moving to that front room there, there's a large dining area there. there is also a large kitchen to the rear here, which is more than sufficient. I think we would probably also hope that they might use some of the facilities in Maldon, as this is a tourist attraction, but there is sufficient catering in there, and communal spaces as well. I think there are spaces obviously on the ground floor, but also on the first floor as well. There's a sitting room here that they can enjoy, so that there is space for eating.
Thank you.
Food.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Beale?
No. So potentially you got 5 families using one kitchen. And is it a communal area, this dining area? As in the same sort of arrangement you'd have in a hotel?
No, because
Do they eat in their room?
It wouldn't be 5 different families. It's or I'm not sure that's how it works. It's not like a guest house where you have different rooms allocated to 2 people, 2 people, 2 people, 2 people, and then there's someone on site to do your breakfast or whatever. It's a building that would be used by a family or it's an extended family for a holiday.
So you're saying it's just for one family at a time?
Effectively, yes. That's certainly my understanding. Hold on. Councillor Hurd. Sorry, I'm very sorry. Councillor Lagan first and then Councillor Hurd.
Thank you. I think we're getting lost in the weeds here.
Yeah, I think we are.
You can't say who's going to eat, how they're going to eat, what they're going to eat. You can't say who's going to use it. There's all of my family going down to Bristol tomorrow to stay in a house. Okay, there's 8 of us. So there's the facilities there, and we're going to go and use the facilities and respect facilities. So I think we've been distracted a little bit about the emotion of the whole thing, because it is a very emotive aspect. But we can't say that the planning legislation that allows this report to be developed to discuss it. There's a lot of things about being reasonable and unreasonable, and this is why planning is such a venomous subject in my view, because some of the things you want to do you basically can't do because the MPPF and the policies allow these things to happen. But you can look at it and you can say, but the rubbish, we don't know what rubbish is going to be generated. We don't know what the vehicles are going to be. They're not going to be 5 different people rock up like there are in a guest house. That's just not how these things work. There will be noise surveys and mitigations put on it. There is possible, if there's noise enforcement, there's the police and the environmental health officers that do come out very quickly, and we've got a very good team in Maldon. So all of those things, I think we're just getting lost in the weeds. I think we've got to look at look at the change of use, look at what the policies say, and make a judgment decision based on what's in front of us there. Because I'm some of the worst people as well for going off looking at the emotive side of it, but what's in front of us is what in front of us, and there's all of those things are just immaterial.
Thank you, Councillor Lagan. Councillor Hurd, and then I'm going to draw the matter to a close and we'll move on.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Actually, I'm just going to really echo what Councillor Lagan has said. We have to be very careful. We are here to judge for this application. I understand about the cellar, but that's not what this application is for. It's not a hotel, it's an Airbnb, and B&B stands for bed and breakfast. And the likelihood is that these people may or may not dine out in Maldon, but the point is there's some eating facilities there. That's why it's an Airbnb. And the reason that it's not a hotel is because it should be more affordable, it should be more homely, there should be more amenities than a standard hotel room. I appreciate we've got the Premier in, but clearly this is going to be at a more reasonable cost than that. But I really do urge all members to think very carefully about this. Look at what we've got in front of us. We can't say who is going to stay there or indeed how many there are. All we need to do is to look at what we have in the report. And from what we see in the report, I can't see any technical reason why we should refuse this.
Members, I need a proposal.
Well, I'm happy to make the proposal, Chairman, and that we go with the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lagan. All those in favour, please show by hands, please. 2. Those against? 3, and abstentions, 1. That has fallen. However, that leaves us in a situation where we need a counter proposal.
Did you vote on this, Chairman?
No, I did not vote. I did not vote. We need a counter proposal. Wouldn't make any difference anyway. We need a counter proposal to put on the table from somebody. With valid reasons, obviously.
On the grounds that its intended use will result in excessive parking for the location and its
Won't hold up, will it?
outlay,
Parking won't.
and impacts in terms of noise, just by the management plan, and waste disposal, I suppose, particularly with parking, and the impact on the neighbourhood.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say about noise and waste, that would be very difficult because conditions are proposed to be attached to this application regarding those very matters. There are no objections from the Highway Authority, so the local planning authority would have to then become the Highway Authority without the relevant jurisdiction of the Highway Authority to comment on these particular matters. Any appeal on this basis will put us in a very difficult position and clearly would lead us in a situation where costs would be awarded for unreasonable behaviour.
Could I sort of refuse on the grounds of the impact of parking, the impact of parking, amenity space, and inevitable impact on neighbours and the locality.
See, I think we're still going to have the same problem.
But yeah, I mean, to my recollection, there was no real discussion around amenity space. I mean, what's the impact of the amenity space? What standards are we comparing this against for us to say that it's deficient, given the type of use? Thank you.
Miss Greenwood.
No, I just wanted to reiterate about the private amenity space. For a dwelling of this size, this is not being assessed as a dwelling, this is being assessed as a holiday let. It was found to have acceptable amenity space. Now that hasn't changed. So therefore, and also for the short-term holiday let, there is no requirement for it to be any greater. Therefore, it has already been satisfied on one hand, and there is no need for it to be satisfied on the other. And also with regards to the parking, as Mr. Johnson said, we have no objection from the Highway Authority, and we have accepted the parking position previously for a household with 5 double bedrooms, which could accommodate just as many people as the short-term holiday let, and actually require parking probably more permanently than that type of use where you may arrange to travel with friends or use public transport to get to the destination. So I think looking at it as an officer writing an appeal statement,
Yes,
I think
that's my, yeah.
I think it would be quite challenging. But I completely appreciate the views, but I feel it would be quite challenging.
Can I just make
Yeah,
one
thank you.
other point?
Mr. Johnson.
Just one other point. I mean, reference in the report was made of an appeal decision, not the appeal decision in itself, but a particular element of the appeal decision which is pertinent to this site in terms of parking in the area, and it has been accepted by inspectors, not just on this appeal, but there's been a number of others. I mean, I've been involved in refusing schemes on parking, and it's been shot down, even in my time here. The council as a whole has been criticised also by the inspectorate for not having regard to appeal decisions as material considerations. That doesn't mean we can argue against it, but there are some generic things. The town centre is a generic thing. Developments within the town centre, even if we look within our parking standards, there is a relaxation of parking standards within town centres, because there are policies of restraining in town centres. Town centres are areas where you have the greatest access to public and alternative means of transport. So that makes it very difficult for us to argue against that, because that would be us arguing against our own plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Greenwood, Mr. Fairweather makes reference in his submission that we could look at additional conditioning over and above noise and a noise and activity management plan to restrict the type of bookings that could be taken. Is there any merit in that would give members some solace?
I don't think from a planning perspective, it's not something that I have seen attached, or I feel from, as a planner, it would be my position to put those kind of restrictions on a decision notice. I think that type of arrangement would be dealt with by the letting company.
So that would be by consent?
I think, as Mr. Johnson said previously, I think we would be prejudicing occupants of the site. We certainly would be in a position to do that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to explore every avenue available. And I think I'd like to just go back to the conditions. So there are 6 conditions, 3 years permitted development. So they've got to start the development within 3 years. Everything has to be done in line with the plans. It's holiday accommodation not more than 28 days, or reoccupation by the same person or people within 3 months. There will be a register of occupants, and prior to starting any sort of occupation, the noise and activity management plan, which I feel is actually crucial to this, to be fair, and gives members the reassurance going forward. And hold on just a sec. The waste management plan, which I would have expected to see there, is there. So there are no advisories. They are the 6 conditions. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. When conditions are submitted, it's not to say that nobody can see them. They just may not come to committee. Yeah.
Yep.
That does not stop members from inquiring about what the details of the applications are in the way that they may inquire about details of any applications. In speaking for myself and my officers, putting on a condition like that is not something we would look at lightly.
No, absolutely.
As you know, in my remit as also managing enforcement services, I'm quite clear on what's enforceable and what isn't. I'm quite happy that any officer that will be dealing with the discharge of condition will be happy to discuss with any members the details of the noise and management plan submitted. They can't start the development until these are submitted and cleared by us. If they're not satisfactory, we refuse them. It's as simple as that. They can't start the development. They have opportunities to come back, or they can appeal against the condition.
Is there any way to ensure that noise and activity management plan is agreed with some member input, whether it's the chairman of the committee?
I've not ever seen that in all of my almost 30-year experience in planning, showing my age, across quite a number of authorities, I have to say. But it's not to say that there can't be discussions. Clearly, we have had discussions. We can discuss details of conditions with any member as we can with any application, so they fully understand what's involved. Any concerns raised are legitimate. Yeah. Obviously, it's just not a planning application to follow that planning application route. But not that they can't be taken into considerations. But this is something we would consider. I've dealt with a number of these applications, so I'm quite clear on requesting of the officer to impose these conditions, what I'd be looking for in terms of management.
Thank you. Councillor Beale, then I'm not sure which one was first actually. Councillor Hurd and Councillor Shaughnessy. Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to agree with the officers that probably the parking is a weak link. I don't think that's strong enough to win an appeal, but I think it's a totally inappropriate use of that building. It's a residential area. If it was such a wonderful development, and I think it's about 200-300 years old, if not older, then I'm sure someone would have come up with that idea before. But I think it's an inappropriate use of that building in the area because of the, what's the way of putting it? Because of the disruption and everything else to the neighbourhood. I don't know if that's illegal.
No.
You know, if you get...
It's not.
Just a point of clarity, the site lies within the...
But I think it's just a totally inappropriate use of that building in a listed... It's a listed building. It's in a residential area.
It's not.
And it's totally out of character with the area.
Can I just say, to my understanding, that's not the only listed building which is used for this purpose in the area.
No,
Thank
it's
you,
not.
Chairman.
No, the one next door is used for it as well, as is the Blue Ball.
Use someone who's stronger than...
Councillor Hurd.
Well, I really am very, very concerned about this, Chairman. I think if we've taken a vote to follow the officer's recommendation, and that has failed. So obviously we are looking to come up with a reason to approve this, and I think, to be honest, we're struggling. And if in the event that the refusal fails, then I will be making a further recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened very carefully to what Mr Johnson has been saying and Ms Greenwood. I don't really think there is any way out of this legitimately. So I'm asking, Chairman, if I would be allowed to change my vote.
I think we have to go back to we need another proposal. I need a proposal on the table in order to take this forward.
Chair, can I come back with one more?
Make it short.
Is there a current fire plan? Because it's not like it's a family home where you can just have smoke detectors.
It's not a material consideration. Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Hurd.
Well, I'm happy to make the recommendation once again that we should go with the officer's recommendation, and I hope that all members will vote on this, because I think it is a very, very important issue. And I won't be jumping up and down with glee if this passes.
No.
But the point is, we've got to look at the evidence in front of us, and we've got to listen to the officers, the conservation officer, the experience of Mr Johnson, and I'm really concerned that we will lead this council down to an irreversible journey.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lagan. Can I ask for a vote in favour? To raise hands, please. This is to accept the officer's recommendation. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I will vote 5. Those against? 1. And those abstaining?
I will abstain.
And 1 abstention. The matter is carried. Thank you. I understand that was a very difficult decision and not one that any of us, like you said, has taken any joy in.
I live in a listed building on Silver Street and I lost the count.
Thank you. We will now move on. Please, could you remove yourself from the chamber? Thank you.
But nobody came to check what
Thank
we're doing
you.
now. Nobody did. And you will
I will now move
be
to
a
item 6. Any other business that is the chairman of the committee decides is urgent. I have none. Members and officers, thank you very much for your time and your contributions this evening. And I now thank everybody that is also watching streaming. And I now draw the meeting to a close at 8:34 p.m.